Are we alive?
We are in the world. I mean, we've always been in the world, hopefully not of the world, but now we were digitally projected into the wider world.
Oh, prepositions.
Yeah. Beyond the world.
Yeah.
I had a teacher who made us memorize all the prepositions. That was kind of interesting.
All
I
of
have
them?
no idea I don't know what that was all about, but she was convinced that that was like her job, was to get us to memorize all the English prepositions in alphabetical order.
Wow. Do you still have them memorized?
No.
Oh
She
man.
did not do her job with me, or I didn't do my job, however you want to look at it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like trying to remember all the presidents. It's like I've got, Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Lincoln,
I
the
did
fat one, and
Etc.
Obama.
gain a new appreciation for prepositions and what they actually are, and phrasal verbs as I grew in my knowledge of English. But
Wow.
yeah.
Incredible.
Incredible.
Phrasal verb? What is a phrasal verb?
Oh, phrasal verbs are very short idiomatic phrases that start with a preposition, end in a preposition, start with a verb and end in a preposition. So like go out, that's a phrasal verb.
Huh.
The way I think about it is the connotation is way more complex than the denotation. It's like an extremely interesting linguistic thing. I taught English for a few months in Japan, and I focused a lot on that stuff, because it is a fascinating trick. Once you learn those, it's like learning the tricks in a language.
I would like to welcome everybody to Pop Culture Coffee Hour, America's first and only grammar podcast.
Nice. Actually, I think there are several, but yes.
I'm not familiar.
Orthodox's
I'm not
only
either,
grammar
but
podcast.
I'm just guessing because it's like that rule of the internet, whatever that is. There's something.
I once was kicked out of a English class for claiming to be the grammar king.
Oh.
Was this before Tiger King?
This was before Tiger King, Murder, Mayhem, and Mystery, whatever it is.
It was Grammar King, Tiger, Mayhem, and Mystery.
Yes, Tigers, Mayhem.
Tiger King. I forgot about Tiger King. Holy cow.
Tiger King. A story about
Holy
tigers.
Tiger. Yes.
Tiger King got us through the pandemic.
It
The first bit
did.
of it.
Yeah, at least the part we thought that was going to be the length of it. Yeah, it was like, okay, once Tiger King is over, we're good.
We're done.
Yeah.
It's a mini series.
Exactly. Yeah.
Carol Baskins. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Any day now.
That name. That's awesome.
Well, here we are. Back again.
Again.
They said it wouldn't last. They said Pop Culture Coffee Hour wouldn't last. And we showed them.
But here we are. 171s later, the little engine that could.
Mostly just refusing to die. That's mostly
This is a
what's going
podcast
on.
fueled on stubbornness and spite.
Yeah.
Squeaky chairs. At least that's what I have.
And squeaky chairs.
And a little bit of mayhem and murder. Just a little bit, though. Just a little bit.
I think this is from like a 1930s police office or something. It's very unique. Yes.
Yeah. It makes me feel like I need to put my gun and badge on your desk right now.
Oh, that would be awesome. Yes.
Yeah. Just like I quit the force. That's a foreshadowing. It's foreshadowing the end of this podcast.
I just got it. Well done.
Yeah.
Force
See that?
shadowing.
See that? Well, I'm very excited today because there's a third voice joining us, and we'll introduce him a little bit more, in a second here. But this is my friend Paul. Hi, Paul.
Hey guys. Hi. My name is
I'm really glad to have you, man. But before we get to an official introduction with you, Steve, maybe we should do a little bit of follow-up. Any exciting news happened lately that you would like to share?
For me?
Yeah, I feel like this is a little bit of exciting news that nobody is talking about out there. But a couple of weeks ago, the Assembly of Bishops, all the canonical bishops here in the United States, met together and they approved a new youth and young adult ministry agency, which is super cool. And they approved a new volunteer organization called the Orthodox Volunteer Corps. So it's, I think, a really interesting sign of the bishops getting together, pledging themselves to do something together, to have a pan-Orthodox opportunity for young adults to serve, a pan-Orthodox opportunity to kind of lead youth and young adult ministry, to avoid duplication of efforts and the way that we kind of, segregate ourselves along jurisdictional lines. I haven't heard a lot of details since the meetings. I saw like the press release, and I saw the talks that were given online, which were super cool. So we'll see where it goes, but I don't know. I think there's a lot of potential there. That's kind of cool news in the youth and young adult ministry space.
Yeah, it sort of feels like if all the like motor vehicle conglomerates got together and decided to make like one motor vehicle kind of fleet, instead of being like, hey, we built a truck, and then another company coming along and saying, what if we made a truck? Like there's
that wasn't as good.
Yeah, exactly. But loosely looked kind of like the other ones. So it's really exciting to think that we can all like maybe have the possibility of like pooling our brain children and making brain Voltrons instead. just I
a
don't
bunch
know
of
what I'm
brain
saying.
babies, robot brain babies coming together to make a larger, more menacing robot brain baby.
Robot brain Megatron is
Yeah.
more kind of like what we're, going for. Brain transformers.
Oh, that's fun. Did you guys hear that little
Is
beep?
that your smoke detector?
That was my smoke detector, which I think is out of batteries, so we might get some interruptions every couple of minutes.
And you may be set on fire because it doesn't want to do its job anymore. It's just not so silently protesting. But are we doing anything else? What else? We've got a beach retreat coming up soon.
We do. We're going to North Carolina in 2 weeks as of today, like real analog time. We're going to Winston-Salem, and then we're going to Denver in November. So we hope to see you there. If you're in the North Carolina area, the Denver area, other areas where we're going to be going, go to y2am.org/beachread and come join us.
Woo-hoo! And now, finally, the moment of moments, the thing that I'm excited for, because I do officially now get to welcome my friend Paul. Yay!
Hi.
Paul,
Hello.
you are the first guest that we have had on Pop Culture Coffee Hour. You did it, with the exception, of course, of Father Andrew Stephen Damick, whom we decided to get some retributive justice. But
yeah, that was more of an ambush than a guest appearance.
That was more of an ambush than a guest appearance. But you are a guest. So I'm going to just introduce you a little bit. Cool. Paul and I are parishioners together out here in Arizona. We've been friends for several years. And he is my most reliable friend to go to in terms of many things. But one of the most fun and important parts of our relationship is thought experiments and throwing ideas around and solving all the mysteries of the universe, which we have totally done. So yes. We figured it all out.
Yes. Thinking and exploring as a form of entertainment, right? It's very good.
Indeed. Truly. Yes. And so I'm excited because you are one of the deepest thinkers I know, Paul. And I think especially with a movie like the one we're going to talk about today, your interest in consciousness and like all of that kind of stuff, which I think will be really fun to add to the conversation. So cool. I'm pumped. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself too, so that people know who you are? I mean, the people want to know you.
Well, the most immediate thing I can say is that I'm extremely nervous because I've never done this before. So this is not just a first for you guys. I've never done anything quite like this. I've done public speaking, but this is very different. So what I'm immediately focused on about myself is that I need to breathe.
Breathing highly recommended.
All of the listeners in their underpants.
Yes.
That's a classic speaker's way to.
Yes. And everything else out there.
That makes me more nervous.
Yeah. So I have known Christian. How long have we known each other? You came into the coffee shop like 12 years ago?
Like 2014, 15?
Oh, wasn't okay. I thought it was longer than that ago. Okay, so long enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I know Christian. Christian's a great guy. In case you guys don't know that.
Go on.
I feel like he can probably tell you more about me than I can, because I just like don't really try to think about myself as much as possible. But like, I like music. I like puppies. Long walks. This is true. This is all true.
My favorite color is light tan.
Exactly. All these
No
things
way.
are my favorite as well. Yes. For real though, I do enjoy conversations that are a little bit farther out on the spectrum than small talk. So that's probably a pretty common way that someone would describe me. And it can probably be really frustrating for some people. But for me, it's kind of fun. So that's it. That's probably why I'm here. And, and I'm Orthodox too. So there is that. Yes. Yes, indeed. Maybe just briefly too, you could even tell us a little bit more, even about like what drew you to Orthodoxy, because you nice.
converted a while ago. Yeah.
In a nutshell, I would say I was in a place in my life where I was being exposed to a lot of different options I was already a Christian of sorts, and one who interacted with lots of other types of Christians. And I was kind of confused by all of that, as we get. And I was sort of at a point where I wanted to explore, right? And I had this thought. I remember having this distinct thought where I had been trained to the sort of like burden of original sin, this concept of the burden is the infinite, and the salvation is like the single focal point that you have to find. And I decided, what if it's the opposite? Like what if you actually could be alongside Christ by giving a cup of cold water to someone in a way that's actually salvific? And I had that thought, and I was like, I need to find out if this is actually something that people have thought about before. And there were several different books that I had just randomly in my possession. There was one, this was like emergent church stuff, right? There was this book called, what was it called? Trackless Wastes and Stars to Steer By. And it was like, I almost was like ready to enter this world of like total relativism, right? And then I found out about Orthodoxy and learned about, things like anthropological maximalism and how that could still be contained within my Christianity. So my salvation was saved at that point. So, yeah.
Well, that's great. So, the question then that we have for you, and this is, I've decided,
I should have said my faith was saved. I meant to say my faith was saved at that point. Keep going.
Yes, that's good. That's good. Yeah.
This is why live is really stressful, because if I was writing, I could have been like, where's my eraser? Yes.
I don't like that.
No.
Don't like. Yeah.
No, please do not quote that. Anyway.
There is grace on the live podcast. It's
okay.
Indeed. There's been many moments where things have been said that are probably worth erasing. But welcome to here. Welcome to now. This is the only now we have. But the question that I have is, if you could live in any fictional universe, which one would you choose and why?
Well, this might be a disappointing answer, but I would say this one, but with a few modifications.
Oh, so you'd kind of like build your own fictional universe kind of situation.
Yes, but I would leave it open-ended. So someone would ask what modifications. I'd say, I have no idea. Give me the rest of my life and I'll let you know. But I know that would be the ultimate universe.
Can you make one modification, like everyone gets to fly or something like that?
Maybe. Who knows? Yeah, that could be one of them, but maybe that's not the right. Who knows? It could be something like that.
That's dangerous territory.
I like this place. It's worth saving.
But wouldn't you like it better if you could fly?
Of course. There's a lot of things I'd like to do. I'd like to travel in a lot of different ways. Yeah.
But we got to think this through. Like, if people are flying, but they don't have like extra invulnerability, can you imagine the number of people who are just going to splat into the sides of buildings and like crash land improperly? Like, you can't just have flying by itself. Or just like burn to a crisp as they go through the atmosphere.
Correct.
Because they don't know how to come back down.
Yeah. You got to like,
oh no.
This is like a monkey's paw sort of thing. Everybody can fly, but everybody has like air related accidents,
No one can land. Well, Paul, I'm excited to have you here, man. This is fun, and I think that we'll have a good time having our conversation today. So
yeah, I loved watching the movie again. I just finished it last night, just for the second time. I saw it in the theater the first time.
So good.
Yeah, it was awesome.
So, shall we get to it?
Well, what is
Yes.
this movie of which we are talking about today, Christian?
Nice.
The movie about which we are discussing with new and informed and multiplied eyes is Free Guy, starring the often imitated but never duplicated Ryan Reynolds.
He is something.
He's
just
just
so
one of
charming.
the
kicking
most
ass,
likable
or kicking butt.
actors of all time.
Sorry, guys. Live. He's really doing a great job. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. He is. He is one of the most likable actors I think that exists.
Yeah, he's got that. It's like he has that kind of Will Ferrell comedy style, but yet he's way more approachable in my opinion. Will Ferrell is a little bit of a weirdo for some people. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Well, Stephen, will you give us a summary of this here movie, just so that everyone's up to speed and on the same page with what we're talking about?
I'm happy to do it. Free Guy in theaters now. I should note this is a very current movie, so we should probably there was my smoke alarm again. We should probably announce because we're going into spoiler territory. We should unleash the porg. So Christian, would you do us all a favor and unleash the spoiler porg as we enter into spoiler territory?
Let us call for the ceremonial releasing of the porgs. You've been porged.
So this means from here on there's spoilers. That's what the
Yes.
Okay.
It is meet and right.
Paul is a longtime listener of Pop Culture Coffee Hour.
I don't listen to any podcasts, if that makes you feel any better. It's just not a thing I do.
I wish I could say that it did make me feel better.
Okay.
All it says to me is that I'm just like everybody else to you.
Well, that's yours to figure out. There's a path there for you to figure out, I guess.
I need to go to see my therapist. That's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
It is fine.
Yeah, so now we're in spoiler territory, so we can be loosey goosey and actually talk about the movie, which is out there. So if you haven't watched it yet, definitely pause us, go watch it, come back. If you don't care about being spoiled, keep going. So Free Guy stars Ryan Reynolds, as we said, and he plays Guy, who is an uneventful guy who lives an uneventful life in a very eventful city when all sorts of crazy things are happening in the background, like right off the bat. But it turns out that he's not a real person, at least at the beginning. He's not human at the very least. He's a non-player character in an online game called Free City. And this non-player character, this NPC, suddenly becomes self-aware and actually, as we'll kind of explore a little bit later, becomes kind of a person after he encounters Millie, who is a woman in the real world who is like playing the game. Guy begins leveling up because he wants to get the attention of Millie, who is like this kind of like assassin superstar in the game. And he becomes this infamous blue shirt guy who is leveling up as never before. He becomes this like international phenomenon that's on the news. Apparently everybody in the world is like paying attention to this game. Gamer culture unites all of mankind. It's very interesting. But he finally captures Millie's attention when she and her friend Keys, who's the floppy-haired guy from Stranger Things, they both realize that Guy is an NPC who has actually come to life. And this matters, or it's really interesting to Millie and Keys because they're programmers who created a game called Life Itself. And the purpose of that game was that they create these artificial intelligences that kind of grow and evolve. And Free City was this game, this kind of shooter game that was just built on top of that programming. And it turns out that the programming works and that Guy becomes this first artificial intelligence to like develop self-awareness and actually like grow and become a person. So the whole Life Itself model actually works. It's just kind of hidden under this game, Free Game, which is done by Tsunami Games and this like evil character named Antoine, who is played by Taika Waititi, and it's just like so much fun. So what happens is like Antoine eventually wants to like delete Free City, replace it with a sequel, but Guy has to save it, save himself, save this underlying Life Itself. And there's this epic fight at the very end where they have to defend Free City and show that the principle of life itself, that like growth and life and development and the springing forth of newness from non-existence almost, like it works. And the violence eventually goes away and life itself begins to flourish. So that's it in a nutshell.
Nailed it. Look at you.
Man, that was almost as fun as watching the movie.
Yeah. I said almost.
You did a great job.
Yeah.
I I'm insecure and I appreciate all kinds of positive validation. So thank you.
Got a really good beard, Steve. Beard is good.
We have
as all the podcast
beards
listeners
all across.
We're three Orthodox guys. I feel
That's
like
true.
beards are kind of de rigueur at this point.
Yeah. Basil the Great said, "When I pull on my beard, I know I'm a man."
Ooh, I like that. I'll write that down.
There you go. Paul, after you finish writing that down, I would just love to, first of all, ask you just, I don't know, what some of your initial reactions on the movie are.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I felt like it was a total sleeper. Like, my wife got tickets for us to go, and I was expecting one of these brightly lit, kind of vapid, just whatever. I thought it was going to be fun, because I don't mind movies like that every once in a while, but it was way more interesting than that. So I definitely would recommend this to almost anybody, unless you have like some problem with avatars being killed, which does happen.
There's a lot of that.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I'm with you, man. I thought I mostly was interested in it just because I like Ryan Reynolds and I think that he's funny in everything that he does. But I was so delightfully surprised by this movie. I loved it. I couldn't believe how much fun it was and just how much there is to talk about in it. And I feel like if Pop Culture Coffee Hour had a spirit animal in movie form, then it would be Free Guy. Like, nice. I was like, that's fantastic. This is the movie. Yeah. Like, this is the movie that most represents this podcast. I thought
that's a cool thing. I feel so honored to be on this episode. Holy cow.
Yeah, wow. Man. Yeah. That's it's cool. All the right things and all the right places and all the right Pauls.
Sorry, my wife just landed, so I'm responding to her text that she landed in Houston safely. Okay.
Well done, wife. Well done. You did it.
Yes, she did. Yes. She was a little scared. She does not like to fly.
Don't blame her. Makes your arms very tired.
No, yeah, or yes, it does.
Oh, what do you think of this movie? Yeah.
I thought it was a lot of fun. I will confess to when we first kind of talked about watching this movie and I saw the trailer, I was like, yeah, kind of like Paul's thing. Like, what are we going to talk about? This just seems kind of like a silly whatever. But there's, it's a very clever story. It's really well acted. I mean, just really charismatic actors like Ryan Reynolds, Taika Waititi. Like, there's so much fun to watch. But there's a lot to chew on, in terms of like our identity. I mean, we're going to get into it obviously today, but like, yeah, there's a lot of depth there. And I like actually your point, Christian, that this is one of those, it's the whole point of this podcast, right? To find Christ at work in these unexpected places. And I walked in thinking this was going to be sort of a, generic summer blockbuster, but this actually had something really interesting to say about salvation and the human condition and who we are. And let's get into it.
Life itself, even.
See
what I did there? It's like a part of the movie.
Life itself. I love that. I love little things in there, like their keys and mouser, like keys, keyboard and mouse. It's just hilarious. There's a lot of little details like that.
Oh, come on.
I noticed that.
What?
I did not notice that on the first pass. Yeah. I thought that was pretty funny.
I mean, I just was like busy. Yeah, I was enjoying all those stupid little things like the Halo tanks in the background and stuff like that. I was
someone put a lot of love into that movie. You can tell. Yeah.
Yeah, I just about cried when he pulled out the lightsaber in the end. That was one of my
gosh, dude,
most wonderful moments in film history. I thought
it was too good. I mean, because it was completely out of left field. Because it's not even it's not a Disney film, right? So. Right.
Well, I think I think it was I think Disney acquired 20th Century Fox. So
right before
that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Because now they own everything. They own Star Wars. They own Marvel. They own everything.
Well, it was still cool. It was still cool.
Indeed. Yeah. They were great. And they saved their best Easter eggs for that moment. That little. I
really hope you guys caught the spoiler alert for that one, because that's not one you want to like have spoiled, in my opinion. The lightsaber.
Well, if people are here.
Yeah,
the porg is in our rear view window.
That's true.
People are still with us.
True. That's true.
That's on them.
That's exactly. Proceed at your own caution, I guess. So let's get started then, kind of with I think one of the like the key themes to this whole movie, right, is that of personhood and and consciousness, and whether or not they're the same thing, and how one becomes the other or something like that, right? Like, I felt like it was such an interesting dynamic in the movie, because I think this movie does ask the question of like, what does it mean to be a person? Mm-hmm. what, is it just kind of this like self-awareness? Is it this consciousness? Is there something else to it? And this is a question I think we ask a lot on Pop Culture Coffee Hour. But I think it's because it is such an important one, that it brings so much to light for us, So I guess I would just want to start there, about like what do we do, when AI suddenly discovers itself to be alive and becomes aware of itself and is capable of like falling in love with other persons. I mean, what do we do with that?
Which is a fascinating question, right? And is like, I don't know, is a very, I feel like Tolkien-esque question. I can't even like have this conversation without thinking of, the elves in Lord of the Rings, right? Who go and like sing to the trees and teach the trees to sort of like come alive, right? I feel like that's a question that's in the background of like Tolkien's Legendarium, right? I think it's it's an interesting question, that affects not only who we are, but I guess maybe even our ability to sort of shape the world, right? Because there's this sense of like persons kind of bringing other persons to existence, not simply in this biological giving birth sense, but somehow raising up persons out of trees, right? Persons out of programming and algorithms in this case. But it raises the question of like what it is to be a person, right? Is it just like, is it self-awareness? Is it some sort of like inner quality of a thing that changes? Where is that line where this program, right, goes from just this NPC that is not a person, that's just kind of this background character that does as he's supposed to like guy becomes a guy, right? Like when does that happen?
Yeah, it's so interesting.
And I think that maybe the most interesting question for me or bit is that it's another person who becomes part of that process, right? Like I feel like Guy really becomes a guy when he encounters Millie for the first time.
For sure. Yeah.
Right. It's not kind of like this inner switch that is flipped in him, but there's something about this other person into, and he kind of enters into relationship with her. Right. And that's
relationship. Mm-hmm.
Right. As we've talked about before, as Christian, you've explored on the Trench back in the day, like personhood is this thing that isn't like in isolation. It's not a genetic thing. It's not whatever. Yes. It's a thing that emerges out of this connection with other persons. It's a thing that emerges out of relationship.
I was having this conversation. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on this. Is your guys' that's not right English. Anyway, I'd love to hear your collective opinions on this. The difference between using the word individual, which has the word divide built in, and using the word person, right? I feel person to me implies relationship. Like you are a person, you almost can get lost in the relationship if you're not careful. But if you're an individual, you can get lost in the isolation. You can get lost in that. I've divided humanity down to the ultimate point, and we do that to things. But it feels like that's what that word leads to, whereas personhood leads more to the thing you guys are describing. What do you guys think? Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a really good and important question. Because I think we do sort of put a lot of stake on individualism. I think that like that if there was like a core tenet, right, to like American life, it's that of like being an individual, kind of being the one who can determine your own destiny and make your own choices and your rights and your whatever. But it really comes back just down to you, and you, and what you decide to do. But that question of personhood, and Steve is the local like Greek dude. Like you're gonna have to check me on my Greek here, but as far as
local Greek dude.
Yeah, Steve. We keep him around because he's the Greek guy. But the like, if we were going to look at the word for person in Greek, it would be this word prosopon, which is literally means face, right? Like there's a face, whereas persona is like is the word for mask, right? So there's like this. So even though we look at like persona, like that, we would see that as the word person.
Well, and here's the thing. It's just like political parties, how it'll switch. Like Republican means something different than it did before. Like just the fact that persona is connected to person doesn't mean that they're pointing to the same thing, right?
Exactly.
So I think the duality is the key here, like the fact that there is a duality built into
Yes.
the Greek language, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So I would
face
even more
versus
closely.
mask. I like
Yeah.
that.
And I think with persona, you could probably even link that more closely to the idea of like a personality, right? Like the personality is kind of, I think, generally speaking, is kind of the mask that we've learned to put on to gain connection, to gain that face to face. And, and I think this is where we are able to, in deeper and intimate relationships, take off those personas, take off those personalities, and say,
So do
I
you
want to
think-
show you the other parts of myself that other people have rejected.
But do you think there's a time and a place for both?
Oh yeah,
Because-
totally. I
Okay.
think without masks, we'd be punched in the face all day long.
Got it. Okay, got
Like
it.
I think that those masks that we've learned to
So
wear
it's more-
keep us
it's
safe in some way.
Yeah. So I mean, it's
Yeah.
just I ask because I know it's easy to go into a different type of binary thinking if you're not careful with things like this. But if we just say that it's about ordering things properly, right? That it's like wear your mask here and I don't know why I'm not talking about the actual mask, right? That's so weird that that happened, but you wear I'll use the Japanese terms. There's honne and tatamae. So the honne is like your true self. Your tatamae is your mask self, right? Your external. And they consider that to be normal, that there's two different sort of associations with how you interact with other humans, right? Or two different ways that you interact with other humans. They consider that to be normal. And that's a big question because I can see both perspectives, both how like, well, that seems to be a problem, but that also could be just an ordering thing. So what do you guys think? Yeah.
Because, as is often the case, right, the binaries kind of break down and this sort of either or breaks down. Because I think you can even interpret the sort of the mask side of it, because I think even that word prosopon sort of has roots in the theater and the masks that they would wear on stage to denote the role that they were playing, that there's something about, like I am Oedipus today or whatever it is, whatever the play is. And I put this kind of mask on, right?
Wow.
Like I am a son and I wear the mask of a son. I am a friend and I wear the mask of a friend. There's this tension between, the core self and the self that emerges like in the roles and relationships like that I use to kind of like navigate the world. Right.
Right.
And there's really no kind of like, it's not necessarily an opposition in either or, but like I begin to discover that core self when I wear the mask of a friend, right? When I wear the mask of a child, a father, a husband, a nephew, whatever that like mask is in the particular relationship. Because the self, the self by itself is like this hidden thing. We talk about like essences and energies in the church, right? I mean, the essence of everything is unknown. Like these things only begin to emerge in their kind of connection and relation,
in their energetic
with others,
kind of movements. Right? Yeah.
Okay.
The way that I'm kind of thinking about this now too is like personas as I think when we hear the word mask, we often think like false, right? Like as if it's like fake, like it's like a fake thing. But I like this idea better in my own therapy practice. Like I use this model of therapy called IFS or internal family systems. We've talked about it before. We talked about it on the Inside Out podcast that we did because that that movie basically is IFS in narrative form on a film. And
it's a
Paul, you and I have talked about it at length. It's just this idea of like there's parts of us, right? So we have all of these different parts, and the parts aren't bad. The parts are actually all good because they're a part of us, and we were made with these parts. The problem that begins to happen is when we begin to think that we are the parts, that we are those things, that like, well, who I am is this part of me, the part of me that likes music. I am a musician. It's like, well, I have a part of me that's a musician, but I also have a part of me that's like, really into science and data and whatever. And the great, beautiful thing that happens about this person that I begin to encounter is as a person who has all of these parts. Right? Like how interesting that you're made up of a musician part and a scientific data part, Paul, and you're a great coffee roaster, and like you have all of these parts of you that make you into this prosopon.
So here's a question: is the real issue is it our language? Is it the way we've chosen to kind of engage with one another that forces us to index in that way and forces us to have to take everything and condense it into something like that? Do you think that it's language, or is it what language is connected to?
And that's a good question, because like language is the way that we sort of sort and organize the world, right? I mean, I think there's potentially like some of the depth that's there when one of the words that we use to refer to Christ is like the logos, right? The word. I mean, he's kind of the organizing principle of existence, and words are kind of the organizing principle of our own lives, right? I mean, there's a really interesting in Helen Keller's autobiography, she has this moment where she talks about like, you know, because she was blind and deaf, and like obviously that creates this impediment to like interacting with other people and learning language. And there's this beautiful moment in her autobiography where she talks about the time that she learned her first word. And suddenly, like, I'm forgetting the way that she describes it, but she kind of goes from this formless chaos to the world actually like is this intelligible thing, because, oh, that's water and it's wet, and this is fire and it's hot. And suddenly like the chaos of the world became organized. And like, we understand the world through the, you know, I mean, this is why we kind of like come to opinions as we talk about them and verbalize them. And
that's intense.
You know, when language has, it's really cool to read it, even just like that chapter of when she kind of learns language in her autobiography. And, you know, I mean, this is where we can have critiques of language, because some languages are better at like expressing concepts than others, right? I mean, languages are shaped by their wrestling with these concepts over the years, right? I think that's one of the reasons why, you know, people sometimes have an affinity for particular language in like the theological tradition, because, you know, Greek or whatever, like people will argue just does a better job of expressing some of these things. And, you know, I mean, think about the way that like even the way that we gender language, how it affects like our understanding of the world. I mean, like these words just affect the way that we navigate things, sometimes for better, sometimes for worse.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's just there's a lot that goes along with it. You know, I've definitely have found too. I love that idea, Steve, that you just talked about, of like language being kind of like this organizing thing. You know, in what Paul was actually, I think you're reading some like that really interesting book about like the right brain and the left brain. Right?
Oh yes,
like,
let me grab it. I got to plug this book, you guys. This is the book, The Master and His Emissary. I recommend this to anyone. I'm not that far in, but it's blowing my mind. So,
do you want to just give us like a little synopsis of kind of like what the book's kind of aiming for?
So, okay, this gentleman, Ian McGilchrist, he is, I think, see, I don't know a ton yet, but I think he was a neurologist. And he basically wanted to do research on like left brain, right brain, but it's sort of considered like pseudoscience. And so everyone was telling him like, hey, don't touch that stuff. It's, you know, it gets hijacked and blah, blah, blah. But he started doing actual research and seeing patterns with how brains would be damaged. And then, and there would be way too many similarities for it to be ignored. So he's like, somebody's got to do this research. There's something happening here, but it's very different. What unfolded from his research it's a lot different than the typical left brain, right brain kind of thinking, because it's really more about, you have this analytical like scalpel side of you that we're so used to presenting and interacting with other people with. And then we have this other side of us that's the presence, right? It's like the present side of our consciousness that is, it is connected to our mind, right? And so the theory is that like these are almost like two separate, not radios, but they basically do different things with the same signal essentially. And you have to order them properly, just like anything, right? There's a duality that's just like creator and created a little bit, that's just sort of built into who we are. And when you get it right, your life is different. That's kind of the idea. It's about ordering your thoughts. It's kind of this idea of presencing, and like meditation's really like buzzy right now. But it's really, I've been having I actually have a really amazing 3-way conversation right now with a friend of mine who is Cradle Orthodox, but he's got a fantastic blog. His name is Nico Kovacevic. But he's, I just want to recommend his blog. It's a fantastic blog. It's called False Prophets, Profits. And then I'm having a conversation with him, and then our dear friend, Father Jesse Robinson. We have a three-way little Marco Polo, and we've been discussing some of these ideas. So that's been really fun. So
That's cool.
Anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
Plug in the book.
Father Jesse is of pop culture fame. He was early mentioned in just about every episode. I think like of the first like 12 to 15 that we did. Yeah. I don't remember even why that happened, but it did. But yeah, I love that idea, right? Of like the, this right brain, left brain presence kind of organization stuff. Like, I mean, really what we know from brain research is that the right side of the brain is really responsible for gathering so much data, right? Like it's reading facial expressions. It's understanding sensations and images. And like, really that's where everything goes first is really goes to the right brain as the right brain takes in stuff. And then the left brain is there to interpret the experience, to make sense of what's going on and to organize it. So it's not just like feelings and things and happening, and like all of that kind of stuff. And the left brain is there to bring logic, lists, linear thought. It likes the fact that I'm using a bunch of L's right now, right? Like that's like what the left brain there is there to do.
And what the book puts into perspective is that it's kind of, and I had this experience. I went camping recently, brought my dog. I was there with like all of my best friends, except Christian couldn't make it. But all of like my circle of friends that we hang out, this like circle of friends, and we all went camping. And I brought my dog with me, and my dog was driving me crazy at one point because I had to have him on the leash almost the whole time. I just asked a couple of my friends that were there who I don't have any kids, right? So I don't have a lot of those tools when things get difficult with my dog. I'm not like good at parenting really. So I just asked my friends, what's the deal? Like, do you guys have any advice for me? Because I don't know what to do with this dog. And they're like, well, first of all, stop asking your dog what he wants to do. And I was like, I'd never thought about it that way. And as soon as I shifted the polarity and I became the master and my dog was basically like this extension of me, it was like beautiful. And I feel like there's this ordering that happens from this type of thinking that's been very helpful for me in my life. And obviously you can understand where it goes from there in terms of God and everything. But
yeah,
I mean, sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, this I think even like is an interesting illustration that gets into like the freedom conversation that we'll get into at some point, right? The dog being free when the dog was properly ordered, as opposed to the dog was doing whatever the heck he wanted.
Which is what our logical mind is supposed to be. It's supposed to be the dog. That's the whole point of this book. Like your analytical scalpel brain needs to be the dog, and it needs to be serving the presencing part of your brain.
That's cool. I like that a lot.
That's what I'm working on, to be totally transparent. This is like my life's work right now for my personhood.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and even that to me connects us with the idea of like silence as the language of God, right? That like, it's just pure presence. It's pure being. It's like, it fits perfectly well with our understanding of what prayer is, which is just like union with God, pure presence, pure like being, there isn't the like, we need to talk and share our ideas across the gap or whatever. But rather just being. And you even bringing in this idea of like the dog and the master, the emissary, all this kind of stuff. It to me, it connects back to this question of personhood, right? Because personhood to me, at least in the schema of the movie, and I would even say like vis-a-vis our faith, is it's something that's gifted. It's something that's given, right, by another person. And it has to be that way. So Guy's personhood is gifted to him by Millie, who is herself a person, right? Yeah. She's coming into the world as a person, not as an NPC, someone in relationship, someone who also is basically the creator of this world, right? Mm-hmm. And that personhood is contagious. It's gifted by her mere presence. And my wondering here is even like when you stepped into that role with your dog, is it possible that you are actually gifting him some personhood yourself because you yourself are a person?
I felt like it actually, I have some really weird theories that I don't know how spooked I want to make you guys, but it was almost like he became a different dog. It was really interesting.
Yeah. He what?
No.
Became a different dog.
He became a different dog. It was like he went from this like primal dog to like just a you know, like it was really interesting. So
Yeah.
I have a lot of,
Well, there's interesting research even on like dogs, right? And the difference between dogs and wolves, right?
Yes.
And like very simple experiments that I think we've even talked on past podcasts of like, you know, if you take two cups and have like a cube of meat under one of them, right? And point, the wolf is not going to like care where you pointed because the wolf has nothing to do with you. But like the dog more often than not is going to go where the human being points. Like the dog's understanding of the world is actually shaped by the human, takes his cues from the human, like has a relational sort of output there. You know, that like a dog, insofar as a dog is tame, unlike a wolf, right? A dog inherently has this like relational connection with its human, which is personal, right? I mean, like anytime you're talking about two beings that have a thing and a rapport and a communication and feed off of each other, like that's a person. I mean, I used to have a dog, right? And I hated dogs. I didn't want a dog until like I had a dog for a little while. And like he had his own personality and he kind of like would snuggle with me in a particular way. And it was just like, you know, he was a unique being, you know, limited in his own way because he was a dog, not a human being, right? Limited cognition, limited whatever, but there's something personal about him.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I think this is why it's important to distinguish between that kind of question of individual and person, right? An individual with its own consciousness can make decisions about what it's going to wear, what it's going to do, what it's going to whatever. Whereas a person emerges in the context of relationship and pure being, right?
Yeah.
Like that is how this happens. So is Guy, for instance, an individual? No, he's really not. Like he can't be because he's utterly kind of dependent on the programming and everything else, right? But his personhood can be gifted to him because of his programming to love, right? To love someone that he'll never find.
And I'll even maybe push into this, right? Like gifted and inspired, you know, because I think there's something really maybe unintentionally theologically deep about that, because it's the love that he has for Millie, which is really Keyes' love for Millie, right? Through Guy's programming. Like he sees her and he kind of falls in love with her at first sight. And that's the thing that brings him out of himself. And I can't help but think about that fundamental rhythm. It's not just the giving of personhood, but also the beauty and the love which inspires personhood. But I think it's Maximus the Confessor who talks about, like, he uses poetry to describe even like the initial act of creation, that like non-existence looks upon God and is so moved by God's beauty that non-existence like pours out of itself and comes into existence.
Yes.
In the same way that like Guy, who is not a person, sees Millie, who is his creator, right? Because she's the one who actually created this fundamental
really
code,
cool.
falls in love with her and comes out of himself, right? And becomes
beautiful.
person.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. Yeah. I like it.
And that, it seems to me that pattern is also replicated by when Guy goes to visit his friend Buddy. And like Buddy already is a buddy, right? But now because of this like inspired personhood in Guy, he's able to actually inspire personhood in Buddy and help him become who he already is. You know, like fully, like he fully becomes who he already is. It's not, you know, there's this manifestation of a deeper reality that goes on. And I love that moment, right, where like there's that question of like, what if you found out we were fake? Like if this all wasn't real, if this all whatever, right? And I love Buddy. He's like so what? Like so what? You know, so what if this isn't real?
Then that's that he was presencing. Yeah, he's there.
Yes, because this moment is real.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Me with you, like that is real.
And contrast the motivation again, right? I think like reading that scene in contrast with, or sort of in parallel with the scene where Guy wants to give Buddy those glasses, right? And Buddy is like cowering and I can't do it. He's afraid. Like he can't even make the choice to be a person for himself. But when Guy comes to him with this like existential problem, like Buddy loves Guy, and actually like Buddy begins to come out of himself and become a person, like because of his love for Guy, who's his friend, you know?
Well, and what's the line that he says? It's something like, if helping someone you love isn't real, then I don't know what is.
Yeah.
Dude.
And I was like, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the gospel. That is that's the gospel.
I love it. I see why you said that about this movie now. Yeah.
That's good.
So
good.
Powerful
and
so simple.
Okay. So I wrote down 3 questions I thought the film asked. I don't know if you guys want to hear these.
Yeah.
I would have added them to the notes, but I missed. I did this morning, and I was dealing with things. But what does it mean to be real? I feel like we already addressed that, right? What is the ultimate good? And then does doing good deeds level you up? Which I thought was a really kind of an interesting thing that got brought. Because remember when he started, he's like, oh, look at all these good things I can do. And he like evolved basically. I thought that was really interesting.
Quickly through the rank, quicker than anyone ever had.
Really fast. Yes.
Yeah. I thought that was a really interesting thing too, right? That also I just love only Ryan Reynolds, right, can pull off a line of I'm not going to be a good guy, I'm going to be a great guy, like that.
And it's endearing. It's not hubristic. Yes. It's not proud, right? It's endearing.
Yeah. And it's true. It's just what happens. Right.
That's exactly how we should be. Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there's something so Christ-like even about that posture, right? Because if you think about the world, right, which as Hobbes described it as nasty, brutish, and short, right? The world is violent and the world is whatever. And, for a long time, I'm sure even today, most people will say the way that you get ahead is by doing what you need to do to get ahead, right? You lie, cheat, and steal, whatever. I mean, behind every great fortune is a great crime. I mean, that's just that is how the world works, right? it's exploitation and it's terrible. And Guy comes into this exactly. Yeah, really. And Guy comes into this and he breaks that cycle,
Mm-hmm. Totally.
And it reminds me of I think it's Nicholas Kavasilas, St. Nicholas Kavasilas in his Life in Christ, who he talks about that the cycle of survival that exists, right? The biological survival, which inherently to sustain life, you have to take life, right? You have to kill, you have to eat. There's always this kind of inherent tragedy to this life cycle, falsely so called, but that's just survival at the end of the day. But then Christ comes in and breaks this cycle with actual life. He doesn't come in to take, he doesn't come in to conquer, he comes in to give and to voluntarily give of himself. And he levels up in that regard, just like Guy is leveling up, not by playing the game according to the rules that all the, let's shoot this NPC for no reason and take his money, right? It's no, I'm going to protect this guy who has no personhood, right? Guy even begins to love these other NPCs, even though they're not persons, but then they become persons after a while too, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love that line too, where he says to them too, that same thing in me is in all of you, right? Like that Christic imprint is in all of you to become alive, right? All of you are made with it. It's the programming is the same, our base programming is the same to become person.
It's a spermatic word, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
it's there. It's the spermatic word that is in all things, because Christ is the word. He is the organizing principle of all things.
Definitely.
This is fun, you guys.
I know, right? See, this is why I wanted you to be on this with us, Paul. The thing to me that kind of is so fascinating about even just the evolution of that thing for Guy, right, is there's this moment of waking up, right? When he puts on the glasses for the first time and suddenly sees reality, right? He sees the world that he's in. I mean, what's interesting is the way that the movie starts is he's I live in paradise, right? Those are the first words that I think he says in the movie, right? I live in paradise. And he, what's wild is he's not wrong, but we'll talk about why that is.
That's hilarious.
He sees kind of Free City and the people who wear glasses, i.e. the real people who are playing the game. He calls them heroes, which is such an, again, what in what world are these people heroes? And suddenly you realize, because you think, oh, maybe they are heroes. They're out beating the bad guys, until you realize this game is basically Grand Theft Auto. Mm-hmm. And you're oh, no, they are not good guys. They're not the good guys. They're beating the crap out of people. They're stealing cars, stealing women, doing all of this crazy stuff. And yet his programming is such that he looks at them and goes wow, look at everything.
Look at what they're, And
Look at what
he's
they're
just happy 'cause
doing.
He wakes up every day, and everything's taken care of, and yeah.
Uh-huh. And he's like hearing about like how the shooting should be over by like 4 p.m. And he's like, oh, like, or whatever
Yeah.
it might, whatever
Is
it
that the
is.
2:30 shooting or the 4 o'clock shooting?
Yeah, that was a great moment. Just
Wow.
like how cavalierly they are, like they accept the violence as like this normal thing, and actually even like the people who perpetrated are the heroes. But when he wakes up and begins to see what's going on, it's like he suddenly is overwhelmed by airplanes flying through the sky and people running down the street with flamethrowers, and he like doesn't know what to do about it. And I had this moment where I was thinking of like, our own conversion is when suddenly we turn, that what Jesus says, repent, metanoia, like think differently, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's not just like think bad about what you've done.
It's not like just Apple, right?
Yeah.
What?
Different. It was just like made me laugh because it's like Apple's motto, think different.
Is
But it's truth is in everything. That's kind of the point, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That our eyes would be open, and that I was even thinking about the word conversion, which it literally means to turn around, right? Like that's literally what convert means, to turn around. But I was also thinking about in Spanish, like ver, the word, that verb is to see, right? Like I see, there. And I was thinking, like, I wonder,
veritas, like truth, like the Latin veritas. Is that the same root?
Maybe, yeah, it might be. It might be. I don't know. But I was thinking, like, that's kind of the ongoing theme of this, is like see differently, like see what's really happening here, see clearly. And I'm wondering how much of like conversion can almost be thought of this way of like, not that I change from one thing to another, but it's just that I see things differently than I used to. I continually am seeing with new eyes, and metanoia, this repentance is just that of thinking differently. I used to think these people were heroes. Now I see that they're the bad guys, and that the way to level up in this game is actually the way of nonviolence. The way is defending the ones who are put down upon, and not by like hating the enemies, but by loving the poor, loving those who are being exploited and hurt, right? Like it's not an anti the bad guys thing. It's a pro the poor kind of thing. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
I can see that.
Yeah. This, I think, is something that's been on my mind, and we talked about it, I think, offline, not on a podcast recently, just about like the whole question of re-enchantment, which is out there, because I think even this like putting on glasses sort of like brings that to mind, right? Because re-enchantment is becoming sort of a fad in different circles, and it's it's very much related to the secular 1, 2, 3 stuff that we talk about. I mean, it's stuff that we've talked about like a lot before, but sometimes I think like the re-enchantment, capturing this like pre-modern way of thinking, or the way people describe it, is like sometimes boils down to like magical thinking, to kind of like seeing particular wonders or particular things. But the point, when Guy puts on the glasses and he sees this invisible reality, is that he's seeing this invisible reality that is like suffusing and permeating all things, right? Even the NPCs, right? I mean, there is like there's grace, and there's truth, and there's beauty even in these like the dregs, right? The things that are sort of exploited and sort of pushed to the side. His eyes are open to a reality that literally is, like, as we say in the prayer to the Holy Spirit, right? Like God is everywhere present and filling all things, not just in the unique or the magical or the big or whatever it is. Like part of I think the wonder of his conversion experience and reconversion is like seeing it in the small, seeing the value in every face, seeing the level ups around every corner, right? That's what that re-enchantment sort of quest is.
Interesting.
Not just finding it in particular places, but finding it everywhere and in all things.
I love that. I think that dovetails perfectly. Yeah, but I think your burden for the poor Christian is not to be negated. I just think it's both and, right? Yeah. That's so good. So good.
Because
I also
This is the way Christ tells us even to approach the poor, right? Like the gravity of Matthew 25 is that, like, you know, Christ comes to us and says, like, oh, the least of them, as you did to the least of them, you did to me, because that is me. Or it's me in and through them, right?
Right.
And this is like the whole thing we've been trying to do with B2B and pop culture and all these things now for all these years. It really is like opening your eyes to the reality that the kingdom of heaven really is at hand.
Oh,
really, right?
Right there.
Really.
Yeah.
Every person is an icon of Christ. Like, really, Christ, like, no fooling. Christ actually meant it when he said that.
Love it.
Yeah, no, it's and that's what I love about that line, right? When Jesus says, like, repent, for the kingdom of God is at hand, right? I mean, really, the way that we can translate all of that would probably even be change the way you think, because the kingdom of God is here, right? Like that is really how we could understand that saying of Jesus, right? Change the way you think, because the kingdom of God is right here. It's not some far off land. It's not some place you go when you die. It's not or at least it's not exclusively those things, right? Like it is here. It is in our midst. It is where the Spirit of the Lord is. And I just had this thought too, that I wonder, right? So the Free City, the game, the place, whatever, is this city that is built on the foundation of life itself, right? Like that is the foundational programming of this game, is life itself. A world where people are free to do it whatever they want, is what Guy says in the end when they finally get there. And Buddy even calls it heaven, like pretty explicitly. Right? Like he's like, then I woke up in heaven. Or like I turned into like this weird dust thing and I float around a little bit, and then I rode a centaur.
That was awesome. When you mentioned the centaur, and you're just like, what? All right.
Yeah. I sat on the back of a half man, half horse. Which, we all want, I guess.
That was
but
so funny.
What was interesting to me, and I'm just having this thought now, that like, if the foundation of Free City is life itself, that is a place that is run by, true freedom from violence, freedom from fear, freedom from all these kinds of things. And what Guy is doing is actually working alongside of that foundational paradise, right? Working to rid Free City of violence, working to rid it of all of this kind of fear. Like he just goes around not being a scared guy, but a great guy. I wonder if part of the reason he levels up more quickly than anybody else is because he's actually playing by the rules of the game. Nobody else is actually playing by the rules of the game.
That's hilarious.
They're all living in this shadow version of life itself, right? But he has tapped into the kingdom within.
That's cool. That's really cool, Christian.
And so he grows into life itself. And he's already participating in that game, even though he's in Free City, surrounded by death and violence and whatever, because he's actually sticking with his true programming.
Yeah. And the true nature of reality, which is not apparent to everybody.
Yeah.
Because the sort of like the social consensus of everybody who's playing Free City is that it's Grand Theft Auto. And the way that you play it is by playing it like Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah. Through power and domination and taking what's not yours and whatever. But for Guy, it's like, no. And I wonder if part of it too is like, there's that moment when he's like flipping the blinds, right? And he can see life itself, but it's only in these fits and glances, like it's never like the picture's fully clear, but he like has moments of revelation, moments of seeing it that kind of ground him and keep him. Or I wonder if it's like, that's part of what it is. Because there almost is like a liturgy to like the way he wakes up, right? Like there's this, gets up, says hi to his fish, puts on his clothes, eats, and then like gets glimpses of the kingdom.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's almost kind of like part of, what for us, like the liturgy ends up being, is this way of like just seeing clearly for a minute, just like, oh yeah, okay, right. Oh, okay, there it is. Oh yeah, there's the, this promised moment where we can be like, oh, this is there we go. Okay, that's where this is headed,
Yeah. That's how I have to live now the rest of the day. I have to live with that in mind.
Yeah. Life itself.
Yeah.
I have a circle of friends. We refer to it as habit stacking, where you create sort of a liturgy of your day, essentially. And they're all, you just add righteousness onto righteousness. You just habit stack. Yeah. It's cool. Try it.
Glory to glory.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's that I think is like a lovely thought. And yeah, and that's the thing, like there's something so incredibly Christian about that rhythm. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. And I think I hadn't made that connection too, that it's this kind of like top of the morning thing that he does. Mm-hmm. I mean, even more than that, like I think it is interesting that he starts his day with kind of a kind word to his fish, mm-hmm. if nothing else. He's again showing he's showing some level of compassion and love to the least of these. That's right. Cool. Quite literally, it's the first thing he does when he wakes up, and then he just kind of stands in quiet. Yeah, like gives it a little kiss on the little fish tank. It's adorable. And then he just stands there in like kind of reverential, like quiet contemplation, just getting this glimpse a little bit of, and that's the thing that like sustains him and leads him forth. Right. Mm. We're called to be dismissed after we have these tastes, both in the liturgy and, God willing, and other times during the course of our lives, to remember, right. To kind of like, because there are fathers who talk about this, how difficult it is to go your life without some level of like consolation, right? Like Silouan the Athonite, who has like 15 years of this like dark night of the soul where he has no visitation of grace and he's just like battling with demons. Like you need to have that veil lifted every now and again to sort of like remember and be encouraged, even if it's just like the little flash of this. Otherwise, man, it's hard, Yeah.
And I think that's the only real solution, right? Because, I'm even thinking too, with like Guy's whole kind of approach to stuff is basically the nonviolent route, right? That's the path he takes towards leveling up. And there's one moment when he actually does get into a fight, and it's jarring, right? Like it just doesn't. It doesn't feel for him too. Yeah. Yeah, when he gets in the fight with the dude, right? And it's like he pulls out, the shield and the Hulk hand, lightsaber, and it's awesome. But it is like, it's really weird. It doesn't feel right. Like if this is how he beats dude, it's like, no, like there's something that feels weird about this, because this isn't what you do. Like you're the great guy. You're not here to
all of his moves were like judo moves, where he would just, the energy that was coming at it, he would like redirect it, and it would like take care of itself. It wasn't like he was actually actively
fighting force with force. Right. Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't work, right? What it's going to lead to is this like dude crushing his chest in. Mm-hmm. But what does work is when he puts the glasses on and opens his eyes, and helps him see what's real. That's cool, right. Yeah. And I feel like a lot of times, even like Christians in the public sphere, right? I think we can get so just like fighting force with force. Like the way, to combat abortion is with like just really going hard on the legal stuff, instead of maybe what we need to do is like work, like open eyes about issues, hearts need to be changed. Hearts need to be converted. We need to think differently, because the kingdom of God is here, right? Like that to me seems to be the path.
It's hard work, because people have to have hard conversations with people they love.
Yeah. And don't agree with.
That's the hard work of righteousness, I feel like.
Yeah.
Not to simply dominate, right?
Yeah.
And that's like even I hadn't thought about this before, even the added layer of symbolism to the weapons that he pulls out, right? Because the weapon that he pulls out is like the Captain America shield, right? And like the whole ethos of Captain America, right, is to be sort of a defender, right? He brings out the shield first and foremost, and then he brings out the lightsaber. And like the lightsaber again itself is like in the ethos of the Jedi is not meant to be this kind of like aggressive, domineering sort of weapon, right? It's kind of this like thing of last resort, and it's meant to redirect, other lightsabers, and it's meant to like redirect blaster power. Like even these Easter eggs, which in the moment I'm like, oh, it's the MCU and it's Star Wars. Like, I feel like even those were carefully chosen to get at this like jujitsu sort of thing. He doesn't unload with a minigun or have like a Rambo moment, right? Like he keeps defending against dude, and the point is not to subjugate him, but like he I love that moment that he brought up, Christian. Like he beats dude by freeing dude, by putting those glasses on his face.
Yeah, that's so good.
And the contrast is so adorable, because then dude starts like jumping around and like, going through all the coins and everything. And he's like prancing around the light post and all that sort of stuff.
The answer. No, just
and that's when he becomes who he is, right? Like dude who was, created to be this like Hulk that's just meant to smash and destroy. Like, it turns out that he's just a big goofball who wanted to frolic and just cheer and be joyful.
Friendly gesture.
That was good. That was good. I got some Kronk vibes from him. If you guys are fans of The Emperor's New Groove, I don't know.
Oh, so good. Yeah.
But that again, that is like Guy winning by not playing by the rules,
for sure.
Because Antoine, right, who makes dude, who is just meant to be this like, and he's like this parody of Guy at the beginning, right? He's just like generic stock catchphrases, no real personality, this big hulking thing with a little like blue shirt tattoo on his pec
chest.
Right? He's a parody. He's actually like he's created evil in that sense, right? He's meant to be this like parody of the good, but Guy actually redeems him from that, and turns him into a friend.
That's powerful. By opening his eyes, by becoming vulnerable and opening his eyes to the same thing that he can see, because he didn't know what would happen. Like maybe he'd have a weapon that he could use against him. He trusted that he opening his eyes up would actually benefit the situation instead of make it worse.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. And I think that's why it's essential, I think, to understand like that the freedom that Christians experience is not just like freedom to whatever, right? Freedom to do whatever you want. But a freedom from, first of all, right? Like we're freed from something, and then we're freed for something, right? And that freedom that we have is from, when I say death, I obviously don't just mean like spiritual death and biological death, but I mean, all the friends of death, such as, violence, domination, whatever, like all the kinds of tools that we use to perpetrate the ways of death in the world, right? Which is why Guy is free to not play by the rules of Free City, and it turns out that in Free City, like the people aren't actually free at all. They're constantly having to compete, to play harder, to beat people, steal things from them. They're bound by something, and they're bound by violence. Whereas, when he receives his freedom, Guy, he wants to free other people. Like that's why he tries to open Buddy's eyes, right? Like, I want you to see what I see, and I want you to whatever. And then he frees all of it's even just the spark of life, right? When he asks for the cappuccino, like you don't have to just make a medium coffee with 2 creams and sugar. Like you can do something else. And she's like, everybody gets medium coffee. Like, but I just want something different today. Sorry. And then she's like stuck on that, right? And she begins to be freed from this thing. And she's like, I want to, and what's that line? She's like, I want to be free to, and he's like, make a cappuccino. And she's like, no, make a difference.
Make a difference. He's like, there you go. And then she's like,
yeah, it's better.
Tea. Yeah.
Or that moment when, moment with the woman who's always taken captive by
the
guys, and she ends up
in the dress,
who ends up writing a feminist manifesto, and like
it's a little preachy at times, but it's really good.
He's like, you could do so much better. You could, I can't.
You could be with a good guy,
and she's like,
you could be with a
yeah,
and he's like, yes,
yes.
It's just like that waking up, right? That we want to share the freedom that we have, freedom from thinking that things need to be a particular way. And this is just the way that they are. This is just the way they are. Bad guys steal things. People need to be there to shoot them, to stop them. It's like, well, what if that didn't have to be that way? What if we didn't have to play by those rules and accept violence as normal and accept greed
guys-
is good, and accept all of these. Like, what if we didn't have to do that?
Yeah. I'm going to Christian's Island. Let's go.
Yeah. Well, but then you see what happens, right? Like when given the choice about to do whatever he wants, when he finally reaches life itself, when he's in paradise, and Guy says to Buddy, you know, you can do whatever you want. The first thing that Buddy does is
Drops the
take
gun.
off his gun. It like that moment, like I started crying when that happened,
Wow.
because it was like
Wow.
he's freed from all fear. He's freed from all sense of I need to get guns to protect myself. I need to whatever. It's like, no, I can just be. I can just be.
Yeah. And it's so powerful that it's the same motion that we've seen him do multiple times early in the movie. Like it's this programmed signal of defeat, right? Because this is, I'm a cog in this machine and I am just kind of meant to be exploited, and the bad guy's going to come bash my head in, you know, whatever it is. I'm going to ride out the 2:30 robbery, the 4:00 burglary, whatever. But it's like the same physical act takes on this completely different dimension, because now it is this thing that is voluntarily done. And it's this shedding of the old garments, right? It's this shedding of death, and it's this shedding of necessity, and it's the shedding of exploitation. And he walks away like arm in arm with his friend, which is so lovely. Yeah.
Like the cross.
Yeah. Yeah.
This instrument of death that has now become a sign of life, you know, like the gun in the bank floor is a sign of defeat, but in the streets of life itself, it's a sign of victory.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Oh, good. There's so many things I want to keep talking about, but we're like getting to the end of our time here, which is a bummer. Any final kinds of thoughts? Paul, I'd love to, you know, I feel like the last 15 minutes or so, I've kind of steamrolled you, so I apologize.
Well,
but
I feel like people are so used to conversation being combative that they don't understand that sometimes it's just a matter of who's driving the car, and we're all going the same direction, right? So I like it when you drive, you know, but I don't know that I have a whole lot to add to this trip other than yeah, I don't know. I think you kind of said everything that needed to be said. So that was beautiful. Yeah. I can't think of anything else.
This movie was so good. It's like shockingly profound.
I know. Here's something I will say. Thank you for saying that. I think that it's really, and this is how I felt when by the way, I have to admit, I just recently saw Hamilton for the first time in my life. I know I'm like the last human, right? I saw it with this man in our respective families, our wives. It was awesome. But what my biggest takeaway from that experience was just this sense of hope that there is still this ability that human beings have to tap into something that's bigger than themselves, that speaks in ways that they could never speak otherwise. And I feel like the same thing happened with this movie. And if nothing else, people should have hope, because right now we need a lot of that, right? Everybody looks for the darkness in films or in, you know, but I think we should flip the other switch on.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. I've been thinking about that a lot. Like, why is it that, you know, 8 years ago when we started doing our stuff here at Y2AM, like we began like trying to be as obsessed with Christ as possible, obsessed with the light as possible, obsessed with like finding him at work. And here we are in 2021, like just kind of the state of the culture, the state of the internet, when I feel like it's so easy
for us. Yeah, it's there.
It's so easy to be obsessed with the darkness and obsessed with, you know, whatever, like, yeah, there's something refreshing and encouraging about this.
Yeah. Sorry, I completely sidetracked what you were saying, but that is
I was just agreeing. I was agreeing. And again, like in retrospect, like I thought about this for a while. Like, why did we start doing something like Pop Culture Coffee Hour 6 years ago? And why did we start doing like, I don't know, if anything, it's a helpful counterpoint to maybe the way things have trended over the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's good, guys.
Well, you made it better.
It was fun, man. It's fun having you.
There's something about the number 3 in conversation. It's the thing I get into, by the way. It's great when you do it right. So
maybe even a Trinitarian
exactly
here.
Yeah.
It's in our programming.
That is what I'm saying.
We leveled up in a big way by going with our programming.
Yes. Yeah. All right.
Not by being good guys,
Just
but
go
by
with the
being great
programming.
guys. Yeah.
And the greatest of all is me. Thanks very much.
I'll be here all week until 10:30.
You're just personifying love. That was perfect. I loved it. Yes. Greatest of all is the personification of love that we see in Christian, or in Stephen and Christian.
Together.
I mean, as people have noted, people can't tell the difference between me and Christian, so like that's appropriate.
He's look like brothers, yes.
To use, actually, if you've ever seen like the Muppets, it's actually perfect right now. Like there's that bit where they can't tell the difference between Kermit and Fozzie, and Fozzie goes, "Oh, I'm the one with the hat." Christian is the one with the hat. For all of you podcast listeners,
that's good.
That is good.
That's very helpful for the podcast listeners. Yes.
Yeah.
You can hear that hat. I know you can. You have super hearing. Yes.
Let it be known, and don't be confused, listeners, that Paul also is wearing a hat. So if you
you can just
feel confused about who's who,
I'll mute my my microphone.
I am the hatted one.
And I'm back.
Well, we want to close out this season of Pop Culture Coffee Hour with a segment that we're calling God Sightings, with just the idea that we want to look for where just over the last couple of weeks, especially I think it's important in light of the movie that we just talked about, right? That like we get these glimpses of the kingdom, these glimpses of life itself, that we want to hold on to, and I think bear witness to, hopefully against, because those things awaken our own personhood so that we can share that and free other people to be persons as well.
Awesome.
So just in terms of a way of like keeping our eyes and ears open for God's presence throughout our lived experience. So Steve, why don't you go ahead and get us started with maybe your own experience of where you've seen God over the last couple of weeks?
I will. For me, the first thing that comes to mind is this past weekend in real time. I was in the Los Angeles area in Alhambra, actually, California, at St. Stephen's Serbian Orthodox Cathedral, which was celebrating its 75th anniversary. And I was invited out to do like a little young adult thing on Saturday night and then give a talk at the banquet. And it's funny. So the head priest, Father Nick, picks me up at the airport on Saturday, and he's like, "We've got a little bit of an issue because there's something with the air conditioner or the refrigerator, and like if it melts down, we're going to lose all the food. We're a little bit nervous right now." Then he picks me up on Sunday morning before liturgy, and he's like, "Fun times. So at 3:00 in the morning, all the power went out, and we have no power right now." So we do this hierarchical liturgy with Bishop Maxim, who was there without any lights, without any microphones, no power. It comes time for the banquet. There is still no power, which means like there is no electricity. There's no microphones for the talks. And yet this community like is figuring out how to cook and prepare and do all this food with no electricity. Father Nick and I are going around, like instead of the banquet talks, it feels like an old sort of tent revival. We're just kind of like shouting at people in the different rooms as everybody was like spread out. And it just had this very like simple sort of feel to it. And it had this, I don't know, I walked in as a stranger. I was only there for like 48 hours. And yet like these people are just like welcomed me and were friendly and were joyous. And you could see them like serving each other meals and like cleaning up after each other. And like, I felt initiated into this family. And it was just this like, as I tried to tell them, like, it's when I walked in, I was immediately blown away by their campus. They just have this beautiful church and these beautiful 8 acres overlooking Los Angeles. But as I shouted at them without a microphone, like who you are as the body of Christ was far more beautiful than any edifice that you have built over these 75 years. And like you saw me as a stranger and you welcomed me and you loved me. And that more than anything else is a testament to what that community was. Like I saw God at work in that community, and it was really beautiful.
That's awesome, man. No, that's a really beautiful reminder for us, I think. Paul, you want to go next?
Yeah, mine's pretty simple. That was beautiful. I just reconnected with a dear friend, and it was one of these things where I had this really powerful night on my favorite mountain with a very dear friend, and after coming down from that mountaintop experience, I was just feeling very like I felt like I was ready to connect with more people, like I just felt energized and ready. And an old friend, my friend Nico, who told me about this book that I can't put down, just texted me out of the blue, and he's like, I'm getting married in a week. Just wanted to let you know. It was really interesting, but like we just became, he's one of those people in my life where you just instantly can get back into the conversation. It's not like any time had passed. I mean, time had passed, but it's not like the relationship had suffered from the time. It had just sort of been on like a stasis or whatever. So that was nice. And it's been good.
I love that, man.
Yeah.
I feel it's crazy how much, like, and mine also involves people. Like all of our stories here are like, incarnated like moments of Christ's presence in our lives, which is just, it's cool.
That must be important. Yeah.
It must be part of like the stuff that we talked about or whatever. Huh, go figure.
Well, we forget stuff. We were talking about this before we were roasting coffee, Christian, that we forget. That's why we
do.
That's why we do what we do. Anyway.
Do this in remembrance of me.
Yeah.
So for me, last week, our girls were home for fall break, which was wonderful. And, usually like for these kinds of things, like spring break or fall break, we'll try to like get away for like a couple nights, maybe like go up to Flagstaff or something like that. But we didn't do that this year. And we just decided we wanted just to stay home and do just a couple awesome things. And part of the reason that we didn't go on a trip was because we decided to take the money that we normally would have used to like rent an Airbnb and go out to dinner and stuff like that, right? To take our girls to go see Hamilton. So we went and saw it again, which was awesome because the tour is right nearby, playing 10 minutes away from our house, which is cool.
It's so great. It's so great.
Yeah. And the girls have been obsessed with Hamilton, like obsessed. They want to listen to it every moment that we're in the car. And they've watched it and they'll dance around the house, singing lyrics, but not really quite accurately. Like when it gets to Aaron Burr's part where he says like, I'm the damn fool that shot him. One of them will go like, and I am the damn fool who shot him. And it's like, well, yeah, okay, that's fine.
Close enough.
So anyway, but they've been obsessed with it. My
That's
girls,
cool.
They're so wonderful. And when we took them and we surprised them with it on my wife's birthday, actually was when we went. So it was kind of a really cool thing. And when they realized what was going on, like they just about died from excitement. They were, I was standing there with my little 6-year-old trying to like help her understand what was happening because someone handed her a playbill that said Hamilton on it. And she was like, what is this? And I'm like, this is a book that shows you what play you're about to see. And so she like looks at the front cover where it's just Hamilton in big letters or whatever. And she just like looks at it and then opens it and starts like looking through, like, what are we seeing? And I'm like, no, this is the thing that shows you what it is. She's like, okay. Opens the book and keeps looking for it. And I'm like, no. What is this? What's this picture that you're looking at right now? And she like just like stares at it and she goes like, Hamilton. And then she goes, like just these big eyes, like looking up at me.
Cool.
And it's
That's a good moment.
It's just adorable. And they're good girls as it is. But I have never, ever, ever heard them thank me so many times for something. Ever.
Nice.
Ever.
Nice.
And it was so great because the pleasure that I derived from it wasn't even that they like recognized my generosity, right? Like, yes, you're right. I am the most benevolent father that has ever existed. But it was just that what I was witnessing was their joy over this good that I had given them that led to a spontaneous emergence of gratitude. What I thought was that like, this must be what it's like for God the Father, for us when we finally truly give thanks to him. And it's not like he's sitting back going like, finally you ungrateful brats have realized like how much I do for you, but it's this like,
it makes him happy.
His joy. Yeah, exactly. Is a participation in our own joy over delighting in the gifts that he's given us. Right. Like he's just like, oh, I'm glad you finally get it. I'm glad you finally get like this thing that, is there that's good for you to like and to love. And it just connected me so much with the heart of the Father, rather than kind of being like, I think sometimes my understanding of the Father is that it's like, you better be grateful. Otherwise, you're gonna go to hell forever, or like whatever. Which is like a really, yeah, exactly. It's a really frowny version of God the Father. But instead just to be like, look at you wanting the thing that I want for you. This is great. This is so great. No wonder like gratitude just emerges naturally. You're finally going with your programming, like you're in it. And I don't know, it was just a cool moment.
That's awesome. How sweet.
Yeah.
I'm trying to picture her face just.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
I tried to take a video of it, but the sound didn't work for some reason. I don't know why. I don't know why that happened that way. But
I snuck a mini disc recorder into the How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb tour, the U2 tour. Thought I recorded the whole thing. It was like muted the whole time. I was so sad.
Oh, no.
So I get that. Yeah. I wish I could listen to that today, but I can't.
Alas.
Yeah.
Well,
oh man, this is fun.
We did it.
This is fun. Paul, thanks for joining us. This is really good.
My pleasure. Honestly, like I was nervous. I don't know why. This is a lot of fun. So anytime I'd love to have conversations with you guys anytime.
Yay. Alrighty. Well, until next time, I guess, huh?
Yeah.
Do we know what we're doing next time? Do we have a third for the next one?
We do have a third for the next time. And the thing that is happening the next is, wait for it. Oh, I'm not committed to this.
Okay.
But we have it on the schedule. It's that new Marvel show, What If?
Oh, there's other things we can potentially do.
Yeah, we probably will do other things. Okay. So what if we don't do that?
Ooh, well played.
Yeah, part of me is like, I kind of want to watch that new James Bond movie.
Me too. I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I don't know. There's stuff. Okay, well, we on the socials, we'll announce what we end up doing. But we'll be back in 2 weeks as we normally do.
Maybe we'll do both of them. We'll do What If the show, and then What If Stephen Christian didn't do What If?
You're blowing my
and
mind,
release
dude.
both episodes.
Meta. What if we did a different podcast? Yeah, I like that. Cool. Well, we'll figure it out in the meantime. Thanks again, Paul.
Thanks,
Christian.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
God bless you guys.